Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. Thank you very much, Helen and Megan, for your time. We really appreciate it. Could you guys just introduce yourselves and please let us or let the viewers know what exactly you guys do and what Robert Walters specializes in, and then we'll kick off with the questions.
Over to you, Megs. You go first, love.
So polite. Okay. Hi. My name is Megan Prosser. I'm, the manager of FS and Commerce, but about to be the senior manager of FS and Commerce for South Africa for Robert Walters, the international global specialist recruitment firm. I started my career in recruitment 8 years ago with Robert Walters in London as a more or less fresh grad. I'd done a few different jobs and then came into recruitment and have been there ever since. In terms of Robert Walters in South Africa, we mainly focus on finance and legal, but we do have other specialisms across both South Africa and Sub-Sahara. And in terms of Robert Walters globally, it's much broader than that, but Helen will also talk about what the UK focuses on.
Okay. My name is Helen Swithenbank, and I've been with the group now for the last 2 decades. So started with the London office back in 1999. My pure focus has been on helping South African professionals, largely in the South African and UK markets, and starting from when they qualify or are soon to be qualified, up to hopefully when they become our clients one day. From a London perspective, we do also recruit across other disciplines, so legal, same as South Africa. We also have business support, operations. What else do we do, Megan? I'm just trying to think. IT. So we've got IT. They do the full stack. IT. I don't know enough about that area, but always happy to get information if anyone's looking at going that route. And yeah, my passion has just been about helping South African professionals with developing their careers, whether it be locally or internationally.
Good stuff. All right. So then if we can just follow up with that, just to find out, just in terms of the CA path, how career opportunities differ, either locally or internationally, if at all, depending on where the CAs complete their articles. So in other words, if they completed at a big four audit firm, a small firm, a bank, etc.
Sure. I mean, I can start a little bit to talk about the CA journey here in South Africa. I actually hadn't ever worked with CAs in London. The 5 years I spent in London, I was working in banking, but not finance. So my first experience of chartered accountants at all was CASAs, which is now my favorite group of chartered accountants globally, with good reason. So I do genuinely believe the qualification here holds tremendous weight. And I'm sure Psycho would be glad to hear me say that, but I really think it has always held tremendous weight and continues to in the market. It's still, a mark of extreme quality. And I think that does spread globally as well. I know in Australia and in the UK, the same reputation applies to the South African chartered accountants. So yeah, in terms of sort of at a base, it's an extremely good qualification here in South Africa. In terms of where you study or where you do your articles can impact your progression or your chances or your options, I really do believe it comes down to the individual. There are certain things people can do to put themselves on the kind of best possible path, but it really comes down to, obviously it starts with the university you choose. That is something that clients look at. But again, if you went to sort of a smaller university or a less famous university, and you're the best there, then you're sort of a big fish in a small pond syndrome, and that works just as well. In terms of big four versus medium size, and also we mustn't forget articles, like top articles, so in a bank or in another type of industry, which are kind of a group on their own. I really think it comes down to the individual. The big four, very rarely do we have clients that say we only want big four. It does happen, but as a recruiter, our job is to kind of break those ideas, because we very much focus on this is the best talent, irrespective. So we find it our job to kind of challenge that. There are clients though that will put it on their adverts that they prefer big four. But we know that in reality, medium-sized firms can offer a very different experience, and the candidates can be very, very hands-on, which I think is really useful. So I'm pro either. The top articles are brilliant. They're quite focused. Obviously, if you're in a bank, you're learning like very specific things, which can be amazing if you want to stay in that industry. And I think that's why so many top article clerks end up staying at the place they did their articles. So yeah, definitely pros. There's only pros to all routes, but you should never. No one should ever sort of let it be a barrier, even if it's on an advert. It's always worth a try to still apply, even if you're in a different sector.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah. So at least it's not like the be all and end all, depending on where you land up for your articles. I guess it just comes down to you as an individual.
Yeah, I think a lot of candidates, when I ask them why they chose a specific firm, you know, that they've tried to go, you know, for different opportunities, whether it be Big Four or your top 10. And when I ask why they chose a specific, you know, company, it's come down to the people and where they felt or felt they were going to be the best fit. Sometimes it has come down to a client portfolio. It might be that with a Big Four, you're going to get listed client experience. So if that's kind of where you want to see your journey going. So I think talking to international, if we see a job come out from a big listed player in the UK and London, there can be a preference for candidates that have that listed experience, but that's more along the lines of maybe they've got a more in-depth technical knowledge or a technical understanding, having worked on a listed client. So there's normally a reason, but as Megan has said, we definitely don't see a CV coming through and go, oh, you're non-Big Four, that's not going to work. It really is a case of talking to that candidate, getting an understanding of the work that they've been doing, the clients they've been working on. And let's be honest, you've all walked the same path. You've written the same exams. You both passed your ITC and your APC. So you're coming with the same level of theoretical understanding.
Yeah.
And then the flip side, not to be, you know, not to be negative.
Sorry, go ahead, Meg.
No, so sorry, I broke up there. Like if you are like a UCT or a Wits grad who went to Big Four, that doesn't mean like you're made. Like it's still a lot of effort, still a lot to do.
Yeah.
It really is just the launch pad for you. So it really, and I know, for example, some of the bursaries will somewhat steer which firm you go to. Obviously, certain firms offer bursaries, which means you have to go there. But 3 years is a long time to not be happy. So you really have to go, if you have free choice, go with what feels the best, I think.
Yeah. So just a word of advice for the students watching this, just to maybe get a feel for what the firms are like, go and do some VAC work, experience what the culture of the environment is, and then just take it from there. Don't rush into it.
And also I think it's quite nice to hear this, because I guess there's a general myth post articles that, you know, if you've chosen to go to a medium firm, you know, you're sort of closing many doors for yourself, whereas that isn't really the case. So I think that's also quite important to pull from this.
I think every brand out there. Yeah, go on. Sorry,
go ahead.
No, I mean, every brand out there, of course, look, we're all businesses, and I have a huge amount of respect for all the firms, and they are all going to tell you, oh, coming to Big Four is better because of this, and coming to medium firm is better because of this. And like, it's all very nice to hear. So yeah, how do you make that decision? I think the nice thing about it is there are no bad decisions, because once you're out, it's like the start of a race, and everyone's really then on their own path. So I think people can kind of get into something and then regret it. And I don't believe anyone should regret it, because you're going to learn either way, and you're going to, like Helen said, get the same competencies and the same board exams, whatever you do.
Yeah. And I think just to add on to that, in terms of international opportunities, which countries have the biggest demand for South African CAs? So I don't know if you guys only deal with the UK, or what's the general trend that you guys see? Obviously, an English-speaking CA, would there be opportunities maybe in a country like Netherlands, you know, with a potential language barrier or something like that?
So I can talk to that question. When you say which countries is the biggest demand, I mean, my job has always revolved around the UK, because naturally, there's been a large majority of South Africans that have got some type of UK ancestry, so can get ancestral visas. The EU passport was always on the table up until this year in December 2020. So that was EU Portuguese, EU French, EU Dutch. I mean, the number of South Africans that had some link in terms of EU, and then British passports as well. So that tended to be the easiest transition, and South Africans are extremely well regarded there. It's English speaking, so that's very easy. So I would say where majority of the South Africans have gone previously or up until this point has been SA to UK. The Netherlands has been another win for South Africans because we have the Afrikaans kind of Dutch similarities, although speaking to a number of the Afrikaans candidates that have moved over there, they said they have to kind of relearn everything and start from scratch again because it's all backwards. I wouldn't really understand too much because my Afrikaans was never great. But, you know, that also peaks and troughs, and then getting into those other countries, moving through the firms or audit to audit seems to be the easier route in initially. Again, going to any other country in Europe, it comes down to languages. So we have offices in Germany and Switzerland. I was speaking to a candidate today about potentially going to Germany, but then does he have business German? And the answer is no, I only speak English. So it's just not as easy. Again, it would be going through your firms initially, building up your language. So English-speaking countries, it's the easiest. Ireland as well. You see a lot of traction, similarities in the kind of culture for South Africans outside of the weather and the braai, although we still do it. But it's that sporting, rugby, cricket, football. You know, where do South Africans like to go? Where family is it? You know, family values are more or less the same. So I would say to you, the top three still seem to be UK, Netherlands and Ireland in terms of moving abroad.
Yeah, and I think in some of the more unusual cases, I know someone who's like Australia, for example. This is pre-COVID. It'll come back once things loosen up a bit. But the USA, I know a lot of South Africans are interested in America. They say regularly to me, and also Dubai. A lot of the people who've ended up there, what they've managed to do is like convert their secondment into a longer secondment that kind of goes on, and then they end up going perm and getting sponsored. So I think really leveraging your secondment is a way to stay. Oh, Helen's gone missing.
Yeah, I think
I was just saying, like, leveraging your secondment is a way to maybe get into some of those more unusual countries. But I think UK, Ireland, Netherlands, USA, Dubai, Australia, as of yet, I've never heard of anyone anywhere else. They're the ones I've heard of.
Yeah.
I haven't got any Japans or anything in my experience yet.
Singapore and, well, kind of anywhere across that side, there's still a massive push for locals. So I've been in touch with our international candidate managers out there, and I'm always on the front foot asking the question for candidates, but it's just not easy. They again say, move through your firm, get on the ground there, build up some relevant client experience, and then it might be easier. But there's a massive push for local talent there above internationals coming in.
And also don't forget that if you're with a Big Four, for example, I'm only using Big Four because obviously they're everywhere globally. So they've got a network, which is one thing to consider, I guess, when you're making that decision. A lot of people we see do their articles with one Big Four and then they actually go into like the audit career with another Big Four. So that's always an option to get. You don't have to limit yourself to only your initial article firm.
Yes,
It gives you some global mobility. So audit's still the easiest area to move around. And if you are not fortunate, when I say fortunate enough, I mean we love South Africa, but I mean if you do not have another passport, let's say it that way, then audit gives you the best platform for global mobility worldwide.
Okay, and then how likely are newly qualified CAs to get a job out of audit overseas?
Okay, shall I take that, Megs? So that would be talking to one of my more recent posts. So if you have the right to work, which you'll see on my LinkedIn startup all the time, must have right to work. for someone with a British ancestral spousal visa, they can get a job outside of audit easily. 100%, like I'd almost put my money on it. It doesn't matter whether you're coming from Big Four, non-Big Four. If we couldn't, I wouldn't have a job, because that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years, because 98% of what we do in the London office specifically, or across the UK, is outside of the audit profession. So we do recruit for private practice, but that's not our bread and butter. So the answer to that is absolutely, if that's the path that someone wants to take and they have the right to work, we can help them. If they have South African passport only, then that's where the challenge comes in. And even though the sponsorship visa for the UK has now been relaxed, specifically since Brexit, because I think they're aware that given time, the shift in the market is going to happen, and then we're going to find ourselves candidate short again. They're going to need to be a little bit more flexible on that tier 2 sponsored visa. So they've taken away the labour test, which used to be the biggest hurdle for a lot of clients, which meant that any company looking to sponsor outside of having a sponsorship license, they had to do a labour test for 3 months on the local market. So they had to send adverts out, look internally, do everything above and beyond to secure local talent. And if they couldn't within those 3 months, then they were able to look at potentially sponsoring someone. That could then add on another 3 months with someone handing in a notice period, etc. So you're looking at a 6-month period, which is very unattractive to any client looking at a quick turnaround. So the only clients that were still kind of that found that still lucrative were your audit firms, because they need to plan that far in advance, which again I've always talked to in my posts. Like, audit firms will start their interviews for international placements come February, March, April, because they want to plan. They've got to do visas. They need to know that they've got so many people ready to go from January the next year to take them through that busy period. I think I'm losing the point here. So we're hoping it's going to become easier, is what I was saying. In time, but at the moment you still need to have the right to work for me to be able to help, or for a clerk to be able to make that move outside of audit. Otherwise, audit is the easiest route for someone that needs sponsorship, and that goes globally. It's where there's a skills shortage, so that's where most clients are prepared to sponsor. Otherwise, right to work, absolutely 100% can secure a job outside of audit in industry or financial services.
Okay. And then if I can just ask, what are the hurdles, if any, like if you move via audit and then you later decide to branch out into something?
And that's a very good question. That was going to be my content I was going to put up this week, because a lot of candidates are being told, make the hey, no, it doesn't matter. I'm going to elaborate on this. So a lot of candidates are told, no, take the job in audit, even if you just do it for a year, because once you're in the UK, it's going to be super easy for you to transition. So they go that route, being misled, thinking, okay, I'll just do a year and then I'm going to be able to move out. They then knock on my door and I'm like, no, it's still super tough. And then it's like 2, 3 years, 4 years. I've got a guy at the moment that's in the UK that is now just about to get his indefinite leave to remain. And him and I have been talking for the last 5 years that he has been trying to make that transition out of audit. So it is not easy. In Ireland and the Netherlands, I think it is a year or 2 years before you can move on to a different visa that then allows you to work independently. But the UK, it's 5 years to get your indefinite leave to remain, unless you marry a Brit and get a spousal visa. That's an idea. Not that I'm advocating that, but that's an idea. Then it's 5 years unless you are able to move inside the firm. And again, you're always competing with those that have the right to work. So some people have been told once you're there in audit, you can then network and maybe you can move into advisory. That's also tough because there's local talent with the right to work that is also trying to make the same moves.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Definitely, yeah.
Generally speaking,
I was going to ask you that, Helen, about advisory. Actually, sorry, Dino. I had the same question about advisory, because I think some people hope they can go to the Big Four, but to do like corporate finance advisory, but it's really popular there as well. if you're amazing, mate, you know, never say never.
Never say never. I think that's it. But I think it's also good for people to have that information up front, because if you had known that, I know in some cases, maybe they wouldn't have made the move to the UK.
Yes.
Maybe they would have stayed in South Africa and built out a different, taken a different journey. Maybe they would have chosen to work for a company that had international ties outside of audit. And then they might have been able to transfer later on down the line. So as long as you have all the information up front and you're making decisions being informed, I think that is key, you know? So always happy to answer any other questions further to that.
And I think, again, yeah, that's something, you know, speaking to other trainees, that's, again, something that you hear a lot, you know, just move abroad and you can, you know, move out of audit after a year. And again, that's not really the case, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely...
Netherlands and Ireland, as I said, those are two different scenarios. So that is a possibility after a year or 2 years. So if maybe you've got the legs to go and you enjoy audit, because some people really love the world of audit, and that's great. Otherwise, we wouldn't have... Yeah, some people do, and that's great. We need those people in this world. But if it's not your path and you don't want to continue that journey, then, you know, it's good to know where you stand, because we don't want to mess clients around either. There's no point in being told one thing and then you get to another country and you're leaving after a year once they've relocated you, been through the interview process. And we also want to be responsible to our clients. So there's no point in mismanaging from either side, you know, tell it how it is.
Definitely, yeah.
Could I add something in there, just which you touched upon, Helen? Like, for example, if you were going to end up doing 5 years in audit, might that time not have been better spent? Like, I hope I've got this right. I mainly work financial services, but WSP is the big marketing agency, right? Global advertising, that kind of thing. But if it's not, one of the big marketing agencies, like, they started offering, you know, transfers with sponsorship to their financial managers after like 2 years with the business. Now, I wouldn't advise CAs to be going in being like, hi, I know you're international, I really want to leave, so can you sort that out for me ASAP? But like, would that time maybe have been better spent in a business where they can send you and you're doing potentially more interesting work? It's really a case of how prepared you are to either slog it out in audit or stay in South Africa, and that's a personal choice for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think just another thing to add is that South African CAs can do their articles overseas with, I think, Deloitte and BDO both offer that so I think that's another route you could take to potentially, I mean, you have to, or if you're doing your articles in audit, you know, rather doing them in the UK and already ticking off 3 years. So I guess that is a way to look at it. But again, it's very competitive to get into.
I had a father ask me that question. His son had both offers. A father, that's how old I'm getting. Should my son do his articles in South Africa or in the UK? You know, and it was a big debate. I mean, the guys in London that have gone over there, the work's going to be the same. The hours are not going to be any different. In fact, I think some of the UK guys have said that the South African guys seem to do longer hours in some scenarios. But if you've got the passport, maybe you want to spend a bit more time in the sunshine. I mean, it's not going to take away everyone that comes out of their articles, whether it is, and I'm dealing with a lot of the guys in BDO UK and Deloitte UK. The only slight advantage they might have is that there's relevant client experience. They might have worked on one of the clients, or the industries might be more familiar, or companies will be more familiar to other clients hiring, but everyone's going in on the same platform. It's still 3 years auditing. So I think it just depends what your push or your drive is, and whether you want 3 more years of hot, sunny weather in South African Braais, or you're open to 9 months of winter, hey? Which is where I'm heading.
Yeah. We also, like, you know, as someone who can't, like, it's not I will work on local roles. So, you know, I spend a lot of time, there is a bit of a brain drain thing happening, you know, because such a large proportion of people who can go do go. And it's been something I've been meaning to write an article about, like, how big is this movement? Like, it seems massive. How big is it really? But like, there's a lot happening here. I'll just say that for South Africa, there's a lot of careers here well paid, beautiful, short commute. You know, there's so much. There is like, I think people get this fixated, and I think the best thing is to be open. Just be open to both, because if you look side by side, maybe saying it could be more lucrative and it could be more rewarding. So yeah, this is not, you know, we really, the South African economy is really busy, like much more than I think people realize. Like, we're busy all the time. So there's a point
grass
there.
isn't always green on the other side.
Yeah, it's not.
No.
There's a lot, you know, people, we always say, like, just like see what is here as well for you. And sometimes people, they start a job and then they love it and they stay.
Yeah. And then I think just something to add on to that, you know, if I've qualified as a CA now, what can I do to differentiate myself from other CAs? You know, maybe having a master's or doing a CFA route or other short courses, maybe in like coding or something like that. What's the general trend you're seeing in the market in terms of what employers are looking for?
Answer that one, Megs, because I've done a lot of the talking. Go.
No, it's good, it's balanced. No, I think anything additional is always good, but like, you do have to have better that you have a genuine interest in it. Like, I think studying, just a lot of people, they'll study and just to put it on their CV, and then they're disappointed when it doesn't make this huge difference to their desirability. So definitely, first and foremost, do it like for your own interest and your own growth. The ones that I think make the biggest difference, a master's, yes, I'd say especially in something like investment management, when CAs are going into that field, that master's is very well, any of those masters is very well regarded, because that is a real specialism. CFA, I think, is a must. I really think every CA is like obviously bright enough to do a CFA, and they're really well regarded overseas and here. I would give, I mean, I know it's expensive, so just park that for a minute, but I think if you do have the means to do it, at least try level 1 and see if you get it. Like, if you get it, it's just a nice thing, and you may find like an aptitude to take it all the way up to level 3. So CFA, I'm always happy to see, because it is academically rigorous. And I think as well, excuse me, I think it's the FMVA, but the Financial Modelling Evaluations accreditation, that's like one small course that makes a huge difference, I think, to anyone wanting to get into corporate finance or investments or equity analysis or any of those kind of very glamorous, what are seen as like glamorous fields. And as you said, Dino, on the other side of it, like advanced Excel, anything to do with, like, you know, I'm not an expert, but, you know, SQL, VBA, if you can get to grips with Power BI, if you can do a bit of coding, as long as you have an interest in it, it can really help. So yeah, those system skills, I'd say, are kind of the skills of the future. And then on the academic side, CFA, FMBA are really popular, and they do make a big impact. Other courses are available, just to be like not biased, but they're the ones I see the most. And I think the one I would kind of argue against slightly is people taking MBAs too early. I have a bit of a like personal bugbear about that when CAs like immediately upon qualifying are like, now I'm doing my MBA with Henley, and I'm like, with what experience? Like, an MBA is meant to be like you take the experience you've had in business and then you hone it, and then they cost a fortune, and you don't get the look. Again, Henley's gonna like find me now, but I do think that's the kind of thing you could wait a little bit longer to do. I think people think, oh, I've got an MBA now, so my salary is going to double. It's not the case. It's if
and
you want to do it, but
for the UK as well, it's exactly the same, because a lot of the people they'll actually bring up from a graduate level in the banks these days. So going with a CA and then an MBA and then wanting double your salary, it's not gonna, doesn't work.
Yeah, it's better to wait, and then when you really are like experienced in the world of business, you're going to get so much more out of it as well. So when people say to me like, oh, I'm going to sign up for my MBA, I'm like, but you know, as long as you know it's not gonna like, yeah, double your salary, then by all means do it. But I keep saying to people, like, it's, you know, MBAs, they are selective to get into, but they also want students. So just don't think it's going to change your life. If you can wait 3, 4 years, 5 years, there's plenty of time for an MBA later, but it's just my personal opinion.
And then just in terms of the CASAs, what qualities do you believe companies value most in the recruitment process, particularly for CASAs?
You go, Hels. I took that one.
Say that again. I just want to understand that correctly. What your
So what qualities in CASAs do you believe companies value most in the recruitment process?
What qualities? I'm stuck on that question. My brain's not working with that. What qualities?
So maybe
Like
anything that differentiates.
traits. Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
Jarred.
Oh, me. Okay. So in other words, anything that differentiates a CASA, maybe when you're looking at competition in the market for a job where.
So to another qualification.
To another qualification.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was thinking
candidate. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's quite different because from an international perspective, I think clients are normally quite set on what it is that their requirements are for a job. So if there was a more commercial role, so something, let's just say a commercial finance manager role, often they would lean towards a SEMA candidate, someone that has been in industry or done their qualification through industry, that has that budgeting, forecasting, kind of hands-on experience already. So for a lot of our commercial roles at a newly qualified level, we often get clients requesting SEMA candidates that have that industry commercial experience already. For group technical roles, they'll always want your CAS, your CASA or your ACCA. So I don't really know how to best answer that question. If we're comparing it to,
I think, I agree with you. Like there's certain sort of like paths that CAs sort of get groomed into. Technical is a really good example. Pretty much any academic articles person, if they want to do technical, the door is like wide open for them. So that's a very common path. I think if we're talking like soft, like qualities like softer skills, it's a spectrum, because what do you have to be a CA to get through it? You have to have a good attention to detail. So everyone has that because it's very detailed work. Everyone is a hard worker to some degree, because you have to be to get through it. Obviously, sorry, my phone is my computer's going off there.
I know my computer was also buzzing just now.
So like everyone has to be hardworking to like a minimum standard. Obviously, you've got like your workaholics. There's a spectrum there. Yeah. So when I talk to candidates about their own personal qualities, because I always see hard worker, attention to detail, they're probably the main two. I'm always like, well, be honest. Like, you know who you really are, and you're not the same as Mr. X sitting next to you. So try and be like authentic in your presentation. Like we talked about this when we did that CV presentation, like, try and work out, like, am I a extroverted person, or am I more of like a head down, detailed, quiet type of person? And that is really going to put you into the right type of business. Like we have businesses that are super serious, very head down, very quiet. And then we have businesses where really all they want is personality. I do believe there are, again, CFOs who got there purely through, even though they're CAs, the reason they got there was through force of personality. Yeah. So if you are really outgoing, energetic, funny, like sort of like person who gets up and gets everyone roused, that's going to be your thing. But you could also just be like a genius, even though you're not maybe the biggest talker. It's a completely different character. So I think self-knowledge is important. And you need to sort of, take a good look at yourself. One way to do that, when you don't really know what you're like and you don't like want to reflect, is to ask other people, like, what do you think? What energy do you think I bring? Like when we take references, we always ask about personality, and usually it's very consistent. So kind of ask your supervisors, what qualities do you think I have? Like with me, my boss is always like, you're a bit mad, but you work really hard. So I'm like, fair enough, that's my brand. Like, I've got it. So I think, those don't just put all the all the adjectives that you think people want to hear, like try and make it actually reflect you.
Yeah.
But the CASA is very highly regarded, you know, overseas as well. And I think you guys bring a lot to the table. And like Megan said, it's really going to come down to, yeah, it's highly regarded. So, I mean, we don't have to kind of explain ourselves anymore. We've been doing this long enough that clients, and there's enough South Africans now that have moved certainly through to the UK, that we don't have to explain that qualification. Come with it with a lot of good qualities, from the technical knowledge as well that you bring to the table, you know, the training that you do. Also, I think having to deal with so many different personalities throughout your articles, I think that's something that I always take on board. If you ask someone about their experience that they've had, you know, and what client they've enjoyed the most, there's always been that tough one where they see the auditors coming and they're like, oh, you know, one of those. So no, I think it really pushes those 3 years of articles. It does make you very resilient as well. I think you come out the other side doing this, having a breath. And I always encourage everyone to take a bit of a holiday, put your feet up if you can financially, because you guys worked super hard through that process. So no, it's a lot of good qualities that come from doing your CASA, for sure.
Yeah. And
We've gone a bit over time, but just one more question to end it off. So it's another myth, I think, in the industry. You know, if I'm working in audit in mining, for example, you know, what are the chances of me getting a job at a bank post articles? You know, if I haven't worked in that sector, or working in retail, wanting to move into the automotive sector. So does that really matter?
I'll hand up quickly for the UK, and then Megs can talk to South Africa. So financial services and commerce and industry is probably where there's the kind of biggest divide, not from one being any better than the other. I know, again, in South Africa, there's this whole, if you're working in financial services, you're kind of up there, and industry, I'm just general audit. Every time someone says to me, I'm just in general audit, I'm like, no, you're not just in general audit. You're in general audit. You're still doing auditing, still writing the same exams. So it's just different industries. For the UK, if a client comes to us, we'll just take, for example, Morgan Stanley, and they've got a job on, they will always have a preference for someone or a clerk that might have had financial services exposure in investment banking, because then they will be able to, you know, I mean, it's just easier if someone has an understanding of the industry that they're going into. Is it impossible then for someone to make that transition that doesn't have it? Absolutely not. There's an MD of one of the banks from 20 years ago, again, third time pass at his board, so that's another myth. If you still get your CA, you can still do it. Had no financial services experience from Durban, but he was open to going into a middle office financial reporting type position, and willing to learn. And they just loved him. They loved his enthusiasm. He did his research. So it's not impossible, but a client, if they had their big wish list like this, and if they're in retail and they saw 5 CVs coming through and someone had a retail client on their CV, well, yes, there might be, that's human nature to kind of pick. But again, as Megan would say, it's up to us as recruiters to push back on that and say, you know what, you've got to meet this guy. He might not have had the exposure to financial services throughout his articles. That wasn't his choice, but he's super well researched. He's done his CFA level 1 and 2. You've got to meet this guy. So, you know, we can break down those barriers as well. And mining, energy, natural resources, I think for the UK, I always try to tell the newly qualified, you're still pretty much a blank canvas at that stage. But when you start now thinking about that next job, you've got to think about the industries that you want to get into, because the more senior you move up in retail, or the bigger the job is, you know, the 90 to 100K, they then want to see that retail experience because that is invaluable to them, or FMCG. Same as energy, natural resources. So the more senior you get, the more valuable that industry relevant experience becomes. Over to you, Megan, because I'm carrying on.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Completely. There are different reporting standards, and there are different things you get exposed to, which sometimes are important. But you like what we love it when we have mixed articles. But then if you're mixed articles, you need to tailor your CV. Like, you just leave on your FS clients, and they'll be like, and others, or just leave on your commerce clients and be like, and some FS. So like, you can paint the picture quite well. I think I mainly do FS. Look, if you're coming from mining, maybe you do asset finance in a bank, or commodities, or something where it kind of eases you in. But like, if you really, really want it and you apply enough, you will make the jump. Just make sure you make it early enough, which I think is what Helen is saying. But yes, it does make a difference. But again, don't be like, now I'm stuck forever, because that's not the case. Just be clever about it, be smart about it when you apply, and kind of, I always say to people, acknowledge it and then argue with it. So be like, I'm aware that I've only come from FMCG, however, and then explain all of the reading and all of the bankers that you follow on LinkedIn, and like, show them that you're committed.
And also, just don't follow the path, because this is what tends to happen. People think because they haven't been in financial services, it's where I've got to aim to get to. But is that really the right culture fit for you? Is it really, do you enjoy working with, in a company where there's a tangible product? I mean, when I speak to a candidate in the UK, I can talk to them and they say banking, I just think, oof, you're really not going to enjoy it there from speaking to you. For me, you sound like you want to be in a softer kind of setup, more of a media retail culture, because he's got his chinos and I don't know, there's just different profiles, and not to box people, but you've got to think about where your personality profile also sits. So qualifying, you don't have to follow. It's the most amazing feeling in the world for you guys to know that finally, what do I want? What is going to work for me? Not just because everyone else is going overseas and, and taking that journey. Take a step back and really think about what it is that you want, and make choices based on that.
Yeah. I think actually one of the senior lecturers we're speaking to was just saying, it's the first time after 7 years where you actually have a choice, and that's what makes it tough. For 7 years you've been following this route, and now you're like, oh wow, I can actually choose something. So,
there's a guy in the UK that's going on a holiday. I spoke to him yesterday from Deloitte UK, and I was so interested in terms of what he was doing. It's like, I've been saving money because I want to take a world trip. Obviously, it's COVID dependent, so we're either going to have to place him in a contract to make more money, but he was just like, I'm going to go on a holiday. Is that going to affect me if I take a year out, Helen? And I said, absolutely not. We had a guy that did a game ranging course. There was one guy in Johannesburg that decided he'd always wanted to be a game ranger. So he took a year out, did a game ranging course. And you know what? He came back a different human, having had another life experience, and not just being pushed into that next job, make the next decision. Again, it depends on your financial situation. I haven't been able to do a game ranging course yet, but anyway, carry on. Over to you, Jarred.
And I think that's about it. I know we've gone quite a bit over time, so apologies for that. For those of you who are on LinkedIn, I think it'll be worthwhile linking with Helen. Her posts are extremely informative. So,
and Megan for local as well.
And Megan for local.
I think we'll actually attach the LinkedIn, your actual links on the post that we give to students. Then I think. But thank you very much for your time.
If you're okay with us.
100%. Absolutely. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.